Class, today we're going to talk about the power of poetry and the mechanics behind it all. There are literary devices that we'll be introduced to today that will help us to enhance our reading and to understand it more clearly. So, before we start, I'm going to ask you to take out a piece of paper and a pen to jot down some notes in case you want to recall them for next class. So, last class, we had talked about how you felt about poetry, the benefits, the negative aspects possibly, and the powerful poetry organizations. But for today's purposes, we're just going to scroll down to slide 8. First, we're going to talk about metaphor. This is a comparison or analogy between two things or ideas to show how one of the things is similar to the other. For example, life is a highway. So we all know that life is not actually a highway. However, we think maybe that life is a journey. So we're comparing life with the highway, and a metaphor allows us to do so. Next, an allusion is a direct or indirect reference to something historical, literary, religious, or mythical. And an example is, he's a lyrical Houdini. If we have no idea what Houdini means, we won't understand the sentence fully. So an allusion directs us to a reference and allows us to gather information based on what we know. Next, a simile is a comparison of two things, almost always using the words like or as. Taking steps like a centipede is an example of a simile, because when we take steps, we aren't actually centipedes, but this sentence compares us taking little steps to being a centipede because they have little legs. So this can make us think of when we were children and we took steps and they were little steps. Juxtaposition is when two unlike things are positioned next to each other. So for example, he went from weak to made. Normally, you wouldn't put the word weak and made next to each other. But since this sentence is trying to show a progression, juxtaposition helps us to do that. Next, when an author gives objects, concepts, or animals human characteristics, emotions, or abilities, that is called personification. So, as you see in this picture, this moon is smiling. But does the moon actually know how to smile? Does it have the characteristics that enables it to do so? We hopefully will say no. Next, onomatopoeia is the name for words that sound like what they describe. So for example, the crowd is buzzing. When we think of the word buzzing, we think of bees, insects, but not humans. In this case, onomatopoeia allows us to put buzzing in the sentence in order to show that the crowd was loud, maybe they were making a lot of noise, and this is effective in that way. Next, hyperbole is a purposeful exaggeration or overstatement. So, when someone says, he's the best ever, do they really mean that he's the best person they've ever met? Probably not. So hyperbole allows us to exaggerate, just to show that in that moment, this guy was the best person ever. Finally, assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds in words that are close together, which is sometimes known as internal rhyme or slant rhyme. He seems the least beat in any season. So if you take a look at this sentence, least, beat, and season are all repeated vowel sounds. So overall, these are not the only literary devices to look out for, but they're some of the most important ones that I'm going to ask you to take a look at in this unit. So when you're done with this video, replay it once or twice, maybe even 3 times, and I hope you understood some of the different devices. Be sure to answer the form that is attached, and tomorrow in class we're going to be talking about poetry yet again, and I will ask you to pick one of these different devices and we're going to do something with it in class. So make sure to review and get familiar with at least one, but also take a look at each one to understand them fully. All right, well, have a good night.